This happened a few months ago. I was 30 and enjoying my quiet apartment. The late-night thunderstorms never bothered me. I liked the sound of rain on the windows. I thought I knew my place well until one night changed everything. The storm rolled in out of nowhere. Thunder cracked loudly, shaking the walls. I settled into my desk chair, trying to focus on my sketch pad. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping at my window. At first, I thought it was just a branch brushing against the glass. But it didn't stop. My skin prickled. I peeked outside but saw nothing but the rain. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was probably nothing. The next couple of weeks brought more storms. The tapping turned into loud knocks. I thought I was hearing things until one night, I noticed a shadow outside. It wasn't a reflection. This thing stood still in the downpour. I froze. I blinked, but it didn't disappear. Was I going crazy? I couldn't tell. The figure was there, heavy and dark, but I convinced myself it was the storm messing with my brain. Then came another night. It was chaotic. I heard laughing mixed with thunder. It sounded like children. I peered out, but I saw nothing in the blackness. I had never seen kids in my building. Maybe I missed them. The chilling thought made my heart race. I had always liked being alone, but now I wanted nothing more than company. My nerves were shot. I thought about asking the neighbors. I wanted to find answers, but fear held me back. The knocks kept getting louder. Each time, it felt like someone was trying to get in. One night, the sound got unbearable. I knocked on the wall, hoping for silence. At first, the noise stopped, and I felt relief. But then I sat back down to sketch. Suddenly, I saw the shadowy figure again. This time, it was closer. I felt pinned to my seat. My heart raced as I blinked again. Maybe it wasn't real. But then I saw a small hand raised against the glass. I stumbled back, terrified. The storm raged outside. The laughter continued, oddly cheerful against the chaos. Who were they? My mind raced. Were they real? I had never seen any of them. Then came a whisper, soft but clear. My name. Jewel-like in the thunder. I turned to the window, and the figure was even closer now. It towered, still and waiting. I got frozen. I blinked again. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing outside. Just darkness. I spent the days after that trying to ignore what happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone anymore. I thought about who was out there, watching. I wished I could go back to how things were before. It didn't make sense. The nights grew longer, and anxious thoughts filled my mind. Was it just the storms playing tricks on me? Or was I missing something terrible waiting at my window? I knew I had to confront this. The unease grew unbearable. Each storm brought a new wave of dread, and I couldn't take it any longer. One afternoon, with rain drumming on the roof, I finally decided to step outside, hoping for some answers. I wanted to talk to my neighbor, Mrs. Hawthorne. She seemed to know everyone and everything that happened in the building. I took a deep breath and walked down the hall. Maybe she had seen something. As I knocked, my heart raced. I expected to hear her familiar voice, but there was silence. I knocked again. Still nothing. I called out for her, but the only reply was the sound of rain hitting the pavement outside. My stomach sank. Had she always been home when I knocked before, or had I just never noticed? I turned back towards my apartment, feeling more lost than ever. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated the hallway. For a split second, I noticed a piece of paper on the floor outside her door. My curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and saw it was a note, hastily written, "Do not open the door." Chills ran down my spine. What was that supposed to mean? I thought about going home, but the instinct to protect myself pushed me to knock on her door one last time. Nothing. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Did she know something I didn't? I hurried back inside my apartment, clutching the note tightly. I locked the door and sat at my desk, sketchbook in hand, but I couldn't focus. The knocking I had grown so accustomed to during storms played in my mind. I pushed myself to draw, hoping it might clear my head. But as I sketched absent-mindedly, I began to see shapes emerge. Shadows in my drawing seemed to come alive, twisting into forms that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the power flickered, and the lights went out. Darkness engulfed my apartment. My heart pounded again, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight. As the dim glow lit up the room, my pulse quickened. My windows revealed flickering shapes outside my door. I got up slowly, trying to shake off the dread. When I reached the window, I looked outside. The rain had stopped, but the air felt thick. Just then, I heard a soft giggle, almost melodic, filling the silence. I resisted the urge to glance away. That's when I saw it. Children's faces appeared, flickering in and out of view. Their features were barely illuminated, twisted with haunting smiles. They stood just beyond my window, beckoning with small, ghostly hands. The laughter intensified, each sound sending a jolt of terror through me. Before I could process what I was seeing, the atmosphere changed. The small hand I had seen before pressed against the glass again. It felt real and distinctly warm. I stepped back, crashing into my desk, the sketchpads falling to the floor. The whisper returned, this time louder, "Let us in." My breath quickened. I stumbled away from the window, gripping the edge of my desk. I needed to get away. But as I turned to run, I felt something cold brush against my arm. I froze, my entire body tense. Whatever was out there had moved closer. Through the whispers and the storm, I realized, I hadn't just been haunted by children in the storm. I had opened a door I could never close. I backed away from the desk, feeling the tension coil in my body. The warmth from the hand on the window was still fresh in my memory, but now I stood at the edge of my world, ready to crash into unknown terrors. The whispering had faded, but I could still hear the faint echoes of the children outside. It felt like they were calling to me, weaving through the shadows of my mind. I glanced at the door, knowing every second wasted could deepen the horror I had just experienced. What am I doing? I muttered to myself. The walls felt like they were closing in. I searched for something to use as a weapon. My eyes landed on a heavy flashlight and I snatched it up, gripping it tightly. Gathering my courage, I inched toward the front door, the flashlight trembling in my hand. I hesitated for a moment, heartbeat hammering, before putting my ear against the door. Silence. Nothing but the soft patter of droplets trickling from the roof above. I turned the knob slowly, aware that even the smallest sound could send me spiraling into madness. As I opened the door, a chill rushed in. I quickly shone the flashlight outside, looking for anything that might have been lurking just beyond the threshold. There was nothing. Just the dark hallway stretching out in front of me. Torn between relief and confusion, I stepped outside, determined to gather the courage to confront whatever had taken residence in my mind. I walked toward Mrs. Hawthorne's apartment. With every footfall, I felt like I was walking deeper into a nightmare. The note I had found still burned in my memory. What could she be hiding? Did she know about the children? Had she seen them? As I approached her door, the bright light from my flashlight flickered. I paused, feeling the energy drain from the air around me. The hallway seemed to sway as shadows danced along the walls. I could swear I heard the soft giggle again, tracing it to a dark corner of the corridor. I turned to see if anyone was there. But again nothing. Then I reached her door. I knocked, a simple rapping that echoed in the stillness. I waited, tension rising within me like a tightly wound string. But I was met with silence again. My heart sank, and I pressed my ear against her door. I could feel something shifting inside, as if the very air in her apartment was thick with secrets. That's when it hit me. I had noticed something strange about her apartment. The curtains were always drawn tight, blocking any light from escaping. I had always thought it was just her preference, but now I wondered if she was hiding something far more sinister. Just as I was about to step back, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone whispering my name. "Help me." The voice was faint, almost lost in the walls. A shiver ran down my spine as I glanced back towards my apartment, that familiar feeling of dread creeping in all over again. "Help me," it repeated, more clearly this time. I spun around, shining the flashlight in every corner of the hallway. But I was alone. Then I remembered something Mrs. Hawthorne had said in passing once: some doors are best left unopened. I turned to face her door again, my hand shaking as I reached for the doorknob. I didn't know if it was too late to turn back. Something felt off, something I couldn't quite place. What if I wasn't strong enough to confront whatever lay beyond that threshold? Then the whisper came again, this time louder and more demanding. "Open the door." It was now or never. I turned the knob, feeling the cold metal bite into my palm. The door creaked open, revealing a darkness that swallowed the hallway. I hesitated, the flashlight flickering again, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. My heart raced as I stepped inside, bracing myself against the overwhelming sense of dread that wrapped around me. "Mrs. Hawthorne." I called softly, but my voice sounded tiny in the vast silence. The air felt different here, heavier, thicker. I swung the flashlight around, illuminating a dimly lit living room, cluttered with dust-covered furniture. The curtains were drawn tight, as if shielding the room from whatever lurked outside. I ventured further. The whisper had stopped, but I felt eyes on me. I moved toward the kitchen, glancing cautiously at every corner. What was I hoping to find? Or perhaps, what was I hoping to avoid? Just then, a shuffling sound jolted me. I whipped around, the flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I felt foolish for asking, but fear made me reckless. To my left, I caught a glimpse of something darting past, a fleeting shadow that slipped out of sight. Was it a trick of the light? I strained my ears, listening intently. There it was again, a soft giggle echoed through the corridor leading deeper into the apartment. "Stop it!" I shouted, frustration spilling over. "Whoever you are, just show yourself." The air felt charged, crackling with tension. I forced my legs to carry me toward the sound, my flashlight leading the way. Suddenly, the whisper returned, wrapping around me like a cold wind. "Help me." It was softer this time, almost pitiful. I felt a tug at my heart. Was this where Mrs. Hawthorne had gone? What had happened here? I stood at the threshold of what seemed like a bedroom. The door was ajar, and the heavy breathing I heard from within sent chills racing down my spine. I had to know. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the curtains were drawn, casting the room in eternal twilight. I could barely make out the outlines of furniture. Then, my flashlight hit something, a doll lying on the floor. It was old, with glassy eyes that seemed to gaze up at me. My heart dropped as I recalled the children's laughter outside. Was this doll a connection to them? I inched closer, my breath hitching. But before I could reach it, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. Panic punched through me as I fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. I could feel something watching me, the whisper growing louder, more frantic. "Help me." It echoed around me, making the hairs on my neck stand up. Then everything went dark. The flashlight flickered out, leaving me in pitch blackness. I felt the presence close in. This was a mistake. I should never have entered. But now, there was no escape. I could hear the soft giggle again, wrapping around me like a shroud, looming closer and closer. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice said, chilling my blood. Suddenly, the darkness exploded into blinding light, and I was thrown back against the door. I gasped for breath, but the laughter faded into silence, leaving me alone. I scrambled to my feet, wrenching the door open and stumbling into the hallway. As I raced back toward my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was left behind in that room, something important. Whatever it was, I knew I had to find out what it truly meant. But what if I wasn't ready for the answer? The next morning, I woke with a start, the sun streaming through my apartment window. It felt like a dream. I tried to shake off the remnants of the night before, but the strange events invaded my thoughts, refusing to be forgotten. I needed answers. I decided to visit the other residents in the building. They had to know something about Mrs. Hawthorne and what was happening in her apartment. I gathered my courage and took the stairs down, each creak echoing my unease. At the ground floor, I knocked on Mrs. Grant's door. She was an elderly woman who often shared stories about the neighborhood. When she answered, I could see her usual smile falter at the sight of me. "Is everything all right?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I was just wondering if you could tell me about Mrs. Hawthorne," I asked, feeling foolish already. She hesitated, glancing back into her apartment as though searching for the right words. "It's a sad story, dear. She was a kind woman, but she was alone most of the time. The neighborhood children used to visit her, but what?" I pressed, my heart racing. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Something happened to those children. One stormy night, they just vanished. Mrs. Hawthorne was never the same after that. Some say she still hears their laughter, and that it drives her mad." I felt the chill of her words wrap around me. It was those children I had heard. I needed to know more. After a few more questions that yielded only vague answers, I thanked Mrs. Grant and stepped into the hallway, my mind racing. As I walked back to my apartment, I spotted Mr. Lee, a quiet man who lived on my floor. He was known for keeping to himself, but I decided to stop him. "Excuse me, Mr. Lee. Do you know anything about Mrs. Hawthorne or the children?" His expression hardened. "Best not to ask about them. There are things in this building that don't want to be remembered." He looked around nervously, then added, "Just stay away from her apartment, all right?" His warning gave me pause. A lump formed in my throat, but I couldn't let it end there. I needed to confront what I had experienced. I had to go back. That night, as darkness fell, I stood at my own door, determination pushing me forward. I could still hear the whisper echoing in my mind. "Help me." With my flashlight gripped tightly, I took a deep breath and approached Mrs. Hawthorne's door. I hesitated, all the warnings from my neighbors flashing through my head. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to find the truth. Just as I was about to knock, the door creaked open slightly, as if inviting me in. My heart raced. Should I go in? What if the laughter returned? What if the darkness swallowed me again? Before I could decide, I heard a faint giggle echoed from within, pulling me toward the unknown. I stepped inside, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, unaware of the true terror that awaited me in that shadowy abyss. The moment I stepped inside Mrs. Hawthorne's apartment, a chill wrapped around me. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. Dim light illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows that flickered as I moved. I could hear the faint giggles again, growing louder, echoing off the walls. "Help me," it called, but I couldn't tell if it belonged to a child or something far more sinister. Every instinct told me to flee, but curiosity held me in place. I scanned the room. It was cluttered, overflowing with dusty paintings, old books, and faded photographs. There was a peculiar smell, like rotten wood and something sweet. My flashlight flickered, and I felt a wave of unease wash over me. I knew I had to find the source of the laughter. It felt like a breadcrumb trail leading me deeper into the unknown. I followed it down the narrow hall. The giggles guided me, bouncing off the walls like a cruel taunt. At the end of the hall, I found a door slightly ajar. It was darker there, a heavy stillness hovering in the air. Pushing the door open, I was hit with a gust of cold air that seemed far too alive. The room was empty except for a small, antique rocking chair that swayed gently, as if someone had just gotten up. I stepped closer, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The floor creaked beneath my feet. "Who is there?" I called out, my voice shaky, barely above a whisper. No response, just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then the giggling stopped. The silence was deafening. I turned to leave, suddenly feeling trapped. That's when I saw it, a small, tattered teddy bear lying on the floor. It was worn and discolored, but something about it pulled me closer. I knelt to pick it up. As I did, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight. Darkness enveloped me. Panic rose within me, but I fumbled to turn it back on. When the light flickered back to life, I gasped. Standing in the corner was a figure, a child, no more than 7 or 8, with hollow eyes and a sad smile. "Help us," he said, his voice barely audible, yet it echoed in my head like thunder. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" I managed to say, trying to sound brave. I looked around for an exit, but it felt as if the walls were closing in. The boy stretched out his hand, and for a moment I felt drawn to him. But just as quickly, he faded into the shadows, giggling once again, leaving me trembling alone in the dark. Everything went silent again, leaving only the faintest echo of laughter. My blood ran cold. The children were real. Something happened to them, and it was connected to Mrs. Hawthorne. I turned to flee, only to find the door had swung shut behind me. I banged on it desperately, heart racing. I could hear the laughter growing louder, the shadows coiling around me, curling like smoke. Then everything went dark again. I felt a presence closing in, a whisper brushing against my ear, "Stay with us." I screamed, but no sound escaped. The walls felt alive, and the fear that had gripped me before was now an overwhelming flood. I had to escape, but how? What was this place? Just then, a light flickered through the cracks in the door, and I realized with horror that I was not alone. Something was watching me, and I wasn't sure whether it was friend or foe. As the door rattled behind me, I prepared for a confrontation I could never have anticipated. The rattling grew louder, reverberating through the entire room. My skin prickled, and I turned to face the door again. I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching me, pressing on my back like a heavy hand. Fear gripped me, but the need to know outweighed my terror. I stepped closer to the door, my heart pounding. "Let me out!" I shouted, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Just as I pressed my ear against the cool wood, a whisper coiled through the air, chilling me to the bone. Stay! Before I could comprehend, the door cracked open a fraction, and a pale light spilled inside. I squinted and glimpsed a frail figure just beyond the threshold. It was a woman, her face obscured by a cloud of white hair. I didn't recognize her, but a deep sense of dread washed over me. "Help them!" she rasped, her voice hoarse and haunting. I took a step back, stumbling over the teddy bear I had dropped earlier. The moment I found my balance, the light flickered wide, illuminating her face. Her eyes were voids, as if all light had been sucked from them. Panic set in, my instincts screamed to run. But before I could react, the giggling erupted again, echoing through the room, drowning out her words. "Join us." The child's voice chimed in synchrony with the woman's words. I turned back toward the door, but it slammed shut again, sealing my fate. The shadows crept closer, swirling and thickening like storm clouds. I could almost feel them tugging at my clothes, beckoning me into their embrace. Desperate, I searched for another way out. The only other room was the one with the rocking chair. I sprinted toward it, hoping for some means of escape. As I entered, I felt the air shift, heavier this time, as if the room itself had become sentient. The rocking chair continued to sway, rhythmic and sinister. I hesitated, my curiosity battling my sanity. Something beneath it caught my eye, another teddy bear, this time pristine, its button eyes glimmered ominously in the dim light. "Help us," came the whispered chant again, from every direction. My heart raced in my chest. Were they all trapped here? The boy, the woman, what had happened to them? I crouched and reached for the bear, my fingers brushing its soft fur. Instantly, the giggling crescendoed, louder than ever, swirling around me like an angry tempest. The lights began blinking frantically, and I grasped the bear tightly, feeling it pulse with warmth in my hand. "Help us," I repeated, amidst growing chaos. It felt like my own plea. The shadows coiled tighter around me, and just as I was about to scream again, a doorway opened in the corner, a vortex of pale light cutting through the darkness. It felt like freedom. My breath caught. Could I trust it? In that moment, something gripped my arm. I turned, and it was the boy from before, his hollow eyes wide with urgency. "Hurry, before they take you too." I tore myself from his grasp, adrenaline igniting my feet as I raced toward the glowing portal. The laughter transformed into shrieks, the shadows lunging forward. I leaped through the opening just as darkness swallowed the room whole. I landed on cold, hard ground, gasping for air. I turned to see the door disappeared behind me. The laughter faded into silence, and I found myself alone in a dimly lit hallway. Where was I now? And what have the children brought me into? The hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit and unwelcoming. The air felt stagnant, thick with an unnameable tension. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the teddy bear tightly, as if it could protect me from whatever lurked in the shadows. I looked around, scanning for any sign of life or a way to exit this twisted place. The walls were lined with doors, all closed and silent. A flickering bulb hung from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows that danced menacingly. I could still hear faint echoes of laughter behind me, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. The silence wrapped around me like a shroud, thick and suffocating. I needed to move. Standing still felt like an invitation for something sinister to pounce. Cautiously, I approached the nearest door, its surface battered and peeling. I hesitated, wondering if I would find help or horror on the other side. Gripping the handle, I turned it slowly, holding my breath. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room that smelled of dampness and decay. I peered inside, and my heart skipped a beat. Moonlight illuminated something lying on the floor, a pile of old toys, scattered like forgotten memories. Among them sat a porcelain doll, its face cracked, with one eye missing. It seemed to stare straight at me, judging, waiting. "Help us," a soft voice came from behind me, barely more than a whisper. I spun around, but there was no one there. The voice had felt close, like a breath against my ear. Panic surged through me as I realized the shadows seemed to thicken, swirling at the edges of my vision. I needed to keep moving. I backed away from the doll, swallowing hard. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching me as I hurried down the hallway. There was something else deeper in this place. Something that wanted in. As I passed another door, a frantic thumping echoed from within. A surge of adrenaline propelled me forward. I approached it, ready to flee if something dangerous came out. The thumping sounded desperate, frantic, like someone begging for help. I pressed my ear against the door, my heart racing. "Hello? Is someone in there?" I shouted, but the only response was a sudden silence. Suddenly, the thumping stopped. "Open the door." A voice cried out, trembling and hushed like a spring breeze through shaking leaves. It was familiar, the boy's voice. Just as I grasped the handle, the laughter returned, enveloping me like a thunderstorm. In a sudden rush, I yanked the door open. A gust of cold air burst forth, and I was met with darkness. My instincts screamed to run, but something pulled me closer. That was when I saw it. The boy stood at the threshold, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. You shouldn't be here. You have to go back. Before I could respond, a shadow lunged from behind him, stretching across the floor like a hungry maw. I froze, knowing whatever lay within that darkness would not be satisfied with just me. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt the urge to turn and run. But the boy's terrified eyes held me in place. What is that? I whispered, unable to look away from the shadow creeping closer, tendrils of darkness writhing like smoke. Please. His voice turned frantic, breaking through the terror. If you stay, it'll take you too. You have to leave. He reached for me, but the shadow pulsed, and I felt its coldness stretching toward me. Without thinking, I lunged forward, pushing the boy aside as I scrambled past him into the room. It was a small space, dimly lit by moonlight filtering in through grimy windows. My eyes darted around, searching for anything that could help. I could still feel the darkness lurking around me, hungry and relentless. The boy stood behind me, fear etched on his face. You shouldn't have come in. I told you to go. I ignored him, scanning the room. There was a row of dusty boxes stacked against the wall, and an old trunk sat in the corner, slightly ajar. I rushed over, throwing it open. Inside were more old toys, but something else caught my eye: a rusted, ornate key. I grabbed it, feeling its cold weight in my palm. Maybe this can help us, I said, hoping to inspire some courage. But the boy's expression darkened. That won't work. It doesn't matter. You need to leave before it's too late. I hesitated, torn between his warning and the pressing urge to fight back against this strange force. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere down the hallway, making me jump. What was that? I gasped. But the boy's eyes were now wide with panic. We have to find a way out now. Before I could respond, the shadow surged forward, engulfing the space between us. I felt its chill snatching at my ankles. Instinctively, I sprinted toward the door to escape, but the boy grabbed my arm. No. We can't go that way. The walls seemed to warp and ripple, shifting as if the place itself was alive. I shook my head. Then where? He pointed to a small door in the corner I hadn't noticed before, almost blending into the wall. We can't let it find us. That might be a way out. With the darkness closing in, I made a snap decision. I pulled the boy with me, racing toward the small door. I fumbled with the knob, feeling the icy tendrils graze the nape of my neck. The latch clicked open, and I pushed inside, dragging him along. The room was dark, but I could hear the soft sound of water dripping and the distant creaking of wood. I took a breath, trying to calm myself as I shut the door behind us. I could hear the shadow scraping against it now, eager to break through. What do we do? I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I thought this would be safe, the boy said, panic rising in his voice. Just then, a flickering light illuminated our surroundings. I squinted, and my breath caught in my throat. Against the far wall was an old mirror, its surface cracked and embedded with dust. But what startled me wasn't just the mirror, it was the reflection staring back at us. That's when I saw it. Something stood behind us in the mirror, inky and twisted, its eyes glinting with malice. My pulse raced as I turned around, but the room was empty. The boy's face went pale, and I realized we were not alone. Desperation surged through me as I stumbled back, instinctively shielding the boy with my body. The dim flicker of the light cast eerie shadows, and I could still see the entity lurking just beyond the reflection, its shape shifting and coiling with intent. I had to act quickly. Listen to me, I said, trying to stay calm and focused. We need to find a way to trap it or banish it. We can't let it take us. The boy, trembling beside me, met my gaze. It wants to feed off fear. If we don't show any, it might retreat. But how? I glanced around the room frantically, searching for anything that could help us. I noticed a series of words written along the edge of the mirror, reflecting faintly in the low light: confront your shadows and speak the truth. I frowned, trying to piece it together. Maybe we have to confront it, I said, gathering my resolve. Face our fears head on. I can't, the boy whimpered. It's too much. What if it takes you? The darkness rattled behind the door, angry and impatient, and I felt the temperature drop suddenly. There was no time for doubt. There's a way out of this, I said, turning back to the mirror. You just have to believe it. I took a deep breath, willing myself to face whatever lay within that reflection. I am not afraid of you. I shouted, feeling my voice echo against the cracked wall. You cannot have us. The figure in the mirror writhed, and the boy gasped. Shadows undulated wildly around us, but I held firm, keeping my eyes locked on the mirror. I see you. I see you for what you are. You thrive on fear, on isolation. You're nothing but whispers in the dark. For a moment, silence filled the room, interrupted only by the relentless thud of something rattling against the door. The shadow in the mirror shuddered, and the chuckling morphed into a low growl, reverberating through the air. Help us! Screamed the boy, the urgency in his voice matching the chaotic flicker of the light. He was terrified, and I could feel it weighing on my heart, but the truth was all I had left. Help us! Staring into the depths of the mirror, I squeezed the teddy bear tightly and added, we will not be your prisoners. We are not alone. We will find each other. The darkness seemed to recoil from my words, struggling against the weight of my conviction. The energy shifted, and I felt something change a fissure in the overwhelming gloom. Fractured whispers, twisted minds, you hold no dominion here. I chanted louder, feeling my throat strain. The boy gasped suddenly as the grotesque figure in the reflection twisted, revealing its true form. For a fleeting moment, I could see the pain, the desperation etched into its features. Then, with a deafening eruption of sound, the entity surged forward, engulfing us in darkness, but this time it felt different. It began to pull apart, dissolving around us, revealing the light beyond, and we were thrust into a chaotic whirlwind. Hold on! I yelled to the boy as the lights blurred and spun around us. Then, the pressure released, and I found myself standing in my apartment, breathless and disoriented, the teddy bear still clutched in my hand. I looked around, frantic for any sign of the boy, but there was nothing. The shadows had vanished, and all that remained was the dull sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I rushed to the window, peering outside, half expecting to see children in the rain, but the street was empty. Had I dreamed it? My mind raced, questions swirling. What had happened inside that mirage? The laughter, the darkness, it felt real, but now I was back in my own space, my home. I noticed a faint glow on my sketchpad where I had left it on the desk. As I approached, I saw the outline of children playing in the rain, their laughter echoing softly, but they were not trapped, they danced, carefree and unburdened, as if celebrating freedom. Suddenly, a flicker of doubt surged through me. Had they really escaped, or was it merely a fleeting memory of what had been? What of Mrs. Hawthorne and the shadows? Something told me my escape wasn't the end, I was still connected to whatever lingered. I could still feel their pull, the stories left untold. A chill ran through my bones as I thought about the future storms. I took a deep breath, realizing it was still so much more than just an ending. I hadn't freed them from their bonds, I had merely tapped into something deeper. I moved away from the window, heart heavy, knowing I'd always wonder. I packed my things, knowing I needed to leave, to give room to heal, but still, there was something about that darkness I couldn't quite shake off. As I stepped out of the apartment for one last time, I glanced back. There was still a mystery waiting just around the corner, lingering whispers echoing through my mind. Help us. With a shiver, I closed the door behind me, unsure if I had truly escaped or merely moved on. I stepped into the world outside, the rain beginning to fall again, and as I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but the question would linger: what had I truly left behind?